This is more by way of history and and what the church has been like in the time I've been here. I came to Cal as a freshman in the fall of 1937 from a small town and a very small church of peculiar architecture, and the largest church in town probably seated 150 or so. That's where we had our high school baccalaureate every year. I had heard that there was a church on the south side, but nobody knew anything about it up here. Southern California hadn't heard that the church had moved. So finally I looked in the phone book, found the address, found that I could walk very easily without going across campus, and arrived Sunday morning in mid-August of 37. And there was a greeter at the door. There were ushers at each of the doors into the sanctuary. And we were encouraged to come in and be seated. The organist played the prelude and then went into something I don't remember, but Holy, Holy, Holy was one of the popular processionals. And in came the choir in their maroon robes, about the sort of color. Ladies first, and then the gentlemen, and down in a nice white dress and into the choir loft over there, never to be seen again. The pastor and the elders, I don't remember whether they followed or preceded, but anyway, they went up and the elders sat behind the communion table, and the pastor took his place at the lectern over there. This isn't the lectern that we used then. And the seats for the little short chair over there is the one the pastor sat in. It sort of disappeared behind the communion table, and you only saw the elders' chairs for some reason. And they were two of those large square-back chairs. We proceeded through the opening service part as we have today, and the morning prayer. And then it was time for communion. Communion always came early. So the deacons were lined up back by the door, the chairman of the deacons supervising them, the two shortest deacons in front, and the two tallest back, numbers 1 and 2 in front, and the tallest numbers 7 and 8 in the back. And they marched down the aisle and took their places on the side. Those chairs, those benches, I don't know what you call them out in the narthex, those straight back things, which having sat in them, I think were designed by one of the sterner Puritan fathers as sort of the proper thing for church. Communion was served. The deacons marched down. 2 went center front. Halfway up, there was some kind of little code marking. 2 on the side, halfway up. And the last 2 pairs starting from the very front. And this was a well-filled church, so we could easily pass the trays and partake of communion. The deacons received the trays, took them out to the kitchen, and then we had the sermon. The pastor at that time was Harold Griffiths, who had trained in the theological school at Lexington, Kentucky, and under probably a professor of homiletics who liked Southern oratory and the delightful touches of rhetoric. He gave very polished sermons, but the content was to the point and addressed to the life and times of the church and the world. That continued that way. Dr. Griffiths died. I looked in the history of the church last week and didn't realize before this. He came on the first day of August of 37. He died on the first day of August 1944. He had gone to had been at a board meeting, went into his office, and suffered a heart attack. There was an interim of substitute and temporary pastors, including a young theological student named George Cherry Holmes. And then a new pastor was called, Dr. Ben Watson, also a Southerner, and the services proceeded the same. Dr. Watson's sermons were longer and less organized. Well, Mary pointed out one day that he had passed up 2 excellent stopping spots before we finally came to the call for new members. He found another job in 49, and Dr. Finnegan was called.